The streets don't know the whole story. But we do know that Jim was deeply affected when Chrissy's darkest secret was made public. The entire group was stunned when Jim yelled at Camron, "Dude," while cameras and microphones were rolling. Say Chrissy set everything up. Some say Cam knew all along, and still others are scared to talk. But nobody is warning you about the missing once you know the truth. You won't perceive them the same way, which is why we're investigating everything. No one outside the Manhattan courthouse expected Jim Jones to lose it like this, despite the side glances, stiff shoulders, and muttering. An audio tape and a stolen paper claim that Jim discovered he had been duped for years. For what purpose had Camron been there? Chrissy looked. But why? A sense of tension was evident as the air became heavier with betrayals, falsehoods, and secrets that could chill anyone to their core. Chrissy Lynn, whose name was formerly associated with devotion and love in the hip-hop industry, but was now enmeshed in rumors and scandal, was at the center of it all. The evidence was incriminating, though, and the courtroom had just turned into a battlefield for which no one was prepared. So when the judge's gavel struck, the case was finished. The audience became silent as the hearing got underway, and Jim was the center of attention. The judge was attempting to make sense of the situation and realized that Chrissy had been concealing something important as he went over the papers. Even though Jim's hands were clenched and his knuckles were white, no one could have foreseen what would happen next. A few feet away, Camron sprang up and said, "She's lying. This is all a setup." His voice was full of genuine anger. The two men's pasts and loyalty to each other were racing through their minds as their eyes locked, creating tension. But Camron, the calm one, didn't even bat an eye. In a voice as cold as ice, he proposed, "Let's take this outside." But Jim, feeling deceived and enraged, refused to listen. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen next, so it was noisy as well. After Jim ran out of the courtroom, leaving a trail of rumors in his wake. Camron, reluctantly but forcefully, followed him. There was an electric tension between the two men. He broke the tense atmosphere in the courtroom by saying, "If you think, I'm going to walk away from this after everything we've been through," while the audience looked on, uncertain of what would come next. Was pacing as he considered all that had just transpired. Jim, what the devil is happening? You remained silent the entire time she was deceiving me." Jim inhaled deeply, his face incomprehensible. "Don't tell me you were aware of the issue. I didn't know. Jim, you're taking the wrong way. Got your back. How long were you there?" Jim swung around, his eyes burning with anger. "I didn't know the whole situation, so you have to believe me, man." Camron made an effort to maintain his position. Chrissy's tense eyes and firm voice made it clear that whatever was going on with him was much more severe than any of them had thought. Jim's eyes softened for a moment. He didn't want to think that someone he had trusted, like family, could betray him in this way. But the evidence was there, and he couldn't deny it no matter how hard he tried. "Right now, we need to figure this out together. Gotta get to the bottom of this," Camron said, drawing nearer and lowering his voice as he spoke. But a loud voice interrupted, demanding attention. When Jim and Camron turned back, they saw a crowd of reporters with cameras pointed at them. Jim's anger was slowly turning into a sobering realization. Jim was not in the mood for as the world watched. Jim shouted at the reporters. "Come on, why don't you two tell us what happened in the courtroom?" yelled one reporter, while another asked if Chrissy's betrayal was the reason for the void. "The world's watching. Need to stay ahead of this," Camron muttered as the cameras flashed, pulling Jim away from the media. "We can't keep doing this, man," he said, and Jim's face tensed until he nodded slowly. Jim knew Camron was correct, but he couldn't shake something deeper. The betrayal was about more than Chrissy now. It was about the secrets, the lies, and the friendships that were now in jeopardy. Jim Jones was far from ready to let the drama go, and the two men were caught in their own private battle with the world watching them every step of the way. The backlash was just getting started, and the betrayal had been exposed. The media storm that followed the events outside the courthouse was raging, with every outlet from the biggest gossip websites to the local tabloids consuming the drama. Jim was furiously angry about Chrissy's betrayal, but it wasn't just about her. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that there were other things he should have known but hadn't. He muttered, "I don't trust anyone anymore," as he stared at his phone as the texts continued to arrive. Camron stayed by his side, drew heavily on his cigar, and turned to face Jim. "You're right to feel that way, but don't let the anger blind you, man," Camron said. "You must give it some thought. Something's off. This isn't just about her lying to you. There's more at play here," Jim said quietly as he looked up at Camron. "We're in the middle of something bigger here," Jim said. But he didn't immediately answer because he was still thinking incoherently. Because they had gone through so much together, Jim had always trusted Camron. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something more sinister was hiding beneath the surface. Something he wasn't. Jim pulled out his phone and dialed a number after, noticing that the two guys had been walking silently for a few minutes. "Hey, what's up with Chrissy?" Jim's pulse skipped a beat when he asked, "What the hell are you talking about?" The man on the other end of the phone said, "You're not sure, are you?" The nearly contented voice went on, "She's been playing some serious games behind your back. You've only seen the tip of the iceberg, but there's a whole lot more underneath." With his nails cutting into his palm, Jim tightened his fist and screamed, "I swear, if she's been fooling me, I'm going to make her regret it." He gazed at his phone for a long time, mentally repeating the words. What the hell was that supposed to mean? I don't know who raised an eyebrow, but the man on the phone laughed coldly and said, "I wouldn't be so sure, Jim. You're about to find out the hard way." Before he could respond, the call ended. He turned to face Camron, his expression a mix of confusion and anger that was more than a warning. It was a threat. "You don't know the full story." And he opened the message that said, "We need to talk." Jim scowled when he realized that she was the one who had been deceiving me. "Explain." He turned to Camron and said, "I'm going, but I'm not going in blind. I need you to back me up." Camron nodded and said, "I got you, man. But we're not just walking into some full sit-down. We've got to be prepared for anything." Jim acknowledged that he had no idea what Chrissy would say, but he was certain it wouldn't be love. Jim knew the location, a small, peaceful space where he and Chrissy had shared many memories. The stakes were different this time. Jim was walking toward the entrance with his hands balled into fists at his sides. Each step felt heavier than the last as they entered the building. Later that evening, Jim and Camron arrived at the meeting spot, which was deserted except for a dim street lamp that provided some distant illumination. Jim noticed Chrissy sitting in the corner, calm but tense. Her eyes were screwed with unease, but her face relaxed at his sight. "Chrissy," he said icily, "what the devil is going on? After lying to me and attempting to deceive me, you now want to meet." Chrissy sighed and looked down as if she was struggling to find the proper words. Then she looked up at Jim with an unreadable expression and continued, "Jim, let me just say that I never meant for any of this to happen." Jim had his arms folded across his chest and added, "I'm listening," she said. "I never wanted to hurt you, Jim. There are things that go way beyond just me that I couldn't tell you." As Jim's eyes blazed with rage, I was pushed into a corner, Jim," Chrissy remarked in a tremulous voice. "They have dirt on me that may destroy everything, and they have been threatening me." "Who has been threatening you?" As Jim looked at her disbelieving face, he asked, "What the devil is going on?" Before she could respond, the door behind them slammed shut, leaving the room completely dark, and his heart was racing. A man Jim had never expected to see here appeared out of the shadows. Jim stood motionless, his heart pounding from the tension in the room, staring at the figure that had just stepped into the shadows. His hands clenched in a flurry of panic as his mind failed to keep up, and he looked at Chrissy, who seemed as shocked as he was to learn that there had been manipulation behind the scenes, expecting a firm voice. Camron was standing in front of him, none other than Camron, the man who had been by his side throughout everything. It's a man who had stood with him when no one else would. The man who was supposed to be his brother. Jim whispered in shock as the figure approached, but the figure didn't immediately respond. Jim could hardly make out their silhouette as they moved into the gloomy light. "Jim, you don't know the whole story?" Camron said in a serious, even threatening tone. "But what in hell are you talking about? You've been on my side the entire time. What's it about?" Chrissy turned to face Jim rather than Camron. "I didn't mean to offend you, but some of Cameron's actions are beyond your comprehension." Jim's expression twisted in confusion. "Chrissy, you've been playing me from the beginning. The fact that you do this is astonishing. Camron, too. What is this?" Cameron's expression softened for a minute, as if he were sympathetic. "The stakes were higher, but I didn't want to hurt you either. It's not a setup, Jim. It's the truth. You might not realize how long I have been providing information to the people who are pulling the strings." Cameron's voice became more relaxed with each sentence, as though the weight of his confession were finally being released. Jim staggered back, realizing that Chrissy was just the first step and not the main objective. "You've been working with them?" Jim muttered inaudibly, and the realization slammed him harder than any blow. "Yes," Camron responded in a tone of despair, "but not for the reasons you think. His closest friend, the one person he thought he could trust, had been lying to him all along. Jim, you've been the target for a while. I was the inside man, giving them information and keeping an eye on everything you did since you were the key to taking everything down. You think you can simply walk away from me after all you've done?" Cameron's eyes met Jim's with a chilly determination that said, "I'm done with them, and I'm done with you." Jim's voice was tremulous, and his emotions were running high. "What do you say? You spent too much time being blinded by allegiance." He heard a car engine revving outside before Jim could respond, and his countenance was unreadable as he motioned for Jim to look at the larger picture. "Let's go," Camron said as he turned to go to the door. And Jim stood there for a while, trying to process what had happened, his mind racing from one shock to another. He followed Camron outside, unable to shake the feeling that he was walking into a trap as soon as he stepped out into the world. The sudden change in tone, the distance, and the disinterest jolted Jim. What was going on? What was changing in Camron's conduct? The air was cold. The sound of a car door slamming shut filled the parking lot, and a black SUV with tinted windows was in front of them. Camron said firmly, "We're leaving here, and you would better be prepared, Jim." Jim's stomach churned as he approached the car, not knowing what to expect or whom to believe. But one thing was certain. The game had changed, and the stakes were higher than ever. It's larger than you and all of us now. It's no longer just about you. With a loud thump, the SUV door closed behind the two men, and the driver, who Jim couldn't see, switched on the vehicle. And it began to move silently through the dark streets. Jim kept watching Camron, hoping to see a sign in his face that this was all a sick joke, but he didn't see any. And the tension in the air was palpable as the driver pulled out in front of an abandoned building with boarded-up windows and dirty dirt rather than a normal parking lot. Jim's mind was racing, and he had no idea where they were going, but the sense of dread was almost unbearable. Jim entered and found a dimly lit room with a large table in the middle and people sitting around it, their faces hidden by shadows. As one of the figures Jim said, his heart pounding, "What the hell is happening?" Jim, unable to believe what he was hearing, said, "Oh, I'm more than involved." The man, whose voice was silky and menacing, sneered coldly in response and said, "Don't tell me you're involved too." The room fell silent as Jim realized that he was much more involved than he had ever imagined. It was about something much bigger than Camron or Chrissy, and there was no turning back now. We have only just begun, and believe me, there is still more to come. Justice always finds a way, but you don't want to miss what's about to happen. do you think Jim Jones has already lost, or will he be able to battle his way out of this? Tell me about it in the comments box. In reality, Jim Jones was tricked by the person he trusted the most. And he was led into a world of more deceit, corruption, and treachery than we could have ever imagined. Please express your opinions about the truth being exposed in this way in the comments box below so that you don't miss any more surprising discoveries. This is truly just the beginning, so be careful, pay attention, and keep in mind that the most astounding findings are often the hardest to believe. In the next one, you